Welcome to the 27th Annual St. Paul Heritage Preservation Awards. We're here to recognize our city's outstanding architectural and cultural heritage, along with the people and projects over the recent years that have protected that heritage. I'm Mike Justin, Chair of the St. Paul Heritage Preservation Commission. And first off, I'd like to thank the St. Paul AIA for their longstanding partnership. And we have Rachel right here. And I'd also like to thank those HPC members and AIA members who served on this year's awards jury. Could you please stand and be recognized? And on behalf of both the HPC and St. Paul AIA, I also want to recognize our event sponsors for the 27th year of this event, Blue Stem Heritage Group and McDonald Mack Architects. We celebrate 10 years, 10 projects rather, that have contributed to our city's heritage over the past couple of years. These projects strengthen our sense of history, spur investment and jobs in our community, keep buildings from our landfills. The awards tonight fall into 7 categories. The awards for rehabilitation and adaptive reuse are reserved for projects that require the preservation of significant historic features, but allow alterations to accommodate a new use or changing human requirements. We also recognize new construction in a historic district or neighborhood that respects the building's historic and architectural character. An award for historic landscapes and streetscapes recognizes projects related to our cultural landscapes and their quality of design, workmanship, materials, and reference to historic documentation. A Vote of Confidence award is given to a quality preservation project that may be in the initial stages, gaining momentum, or having the potential to support preservation values in the City of St. Paul communities. An award for cultural heritage or community education goes to a project, organization, or individual making a significant contribution to the recognition of the city's cultural heritage and its value as an educational tool. And then finally, we recognize an organization or individual that has made an impact on preservation in St. Paul. We'll ask the award recipients to come forward as their names are read by the presenters and come up to the front where an award certificate will be presented, and then line up to the right, my right, until all the recipients of that project are announced. After the awards are announced for a specific project, we'll invite any recipient who may wish to talk about their role in the project to say a few words about the project, and do so using this microphone at the podium. And now I'd like to welcome Mayor Coleman for the first presentation.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm just glad. I really want to just say a few words of welcome to all of you, and mostly a lot of words of thanks to the incredible work that you're doing to make St. Paul as wonderful a place as it is. And I'm going to just, if you'll indulge me a little bit, because as I think of the last few months of my term as mayor, and also the 6 years that I spent on the city council, there have been a lot of changes to the city, but there have been a lot of battles around the fronts of historic preservation. And it was in, I think, 1999 when I was in this room, and there was a hearing before the Historic Preservation Commission where the then mayor was trying to get authorization to tear down the Coney and the then Orpheum and the housing there on 7th Place. And it was quite a battle, and I was a kind of a wet behind the ears council member at the time, and had really felt like, okay, this is these are important buildings, and they are worthy of preserving. And one of the things that people kept on saying is, well, what are you going to do with these things? What's going to happen? Is this ever going to open? What are you ever going to do there? And my feeling at the time was, well, I'm not sure how much we have to have that exact plan laid out. But we know these buildings are important, and we know that in the future there will be a reuse for them. So fast forward, you can imagine my thrill when we officially opened up the Palace Theater this year to what I think is probably the greatest music venue in the state of Minnesota, if not in the Midwest, and how that is already transforming the city of St. Paul. I think it's a really good way to bookend the story of why historic preservation matters. It certainly isn't, you don't do it because it's easy. You don't do it because it's cheap. You do it because it's important, because it ultimately represents the best of the heart and the soul of your community. So when you fight to preserve an old stone house and turn it into what I'm hoping will be a place I get a beer very soon, Tom, I saw him in the room. I missed the one chance I had earlier to get a beer there. When you fight to preserve an old historic fire station, when you remember some of the history of our community and fight to preserve the best of it and continue to tell those stories, then you're really fighting to preserve the heart and soul and the essence of what your community is. And so all of you that keep the torch going, all of you that have fought the fight over the years, all of you that have helped us preserve the buildings that make our places so special. Think about Summit Avenue and what Summit Avenue would be if some of those historic structures had been allowed to be torn down. Think about what Lower Town is and the vitality that we see there. That's really the anchor of the vitality in the city of St. Paul. That would not be happening but for the fact that people had the vision to preserve those buildings. And so every once in a while we get criticized for dreaming and believing, and even the best of us sometimes wonder, is it all worth it? But the fact of the matter is, when you look at the resurgence and the renaissance and the vitality of the city of St. Paul, whether it's on West 7th Street or whether it's on the east side in Dayton's Bluff, or whether it's in Lower Town or wherever it might be in any corner of the city, I will show you where historic preservation has played an incredible role in telling that story and helping us propel us forward. So I just want to thank you all for your service. Thank you all for being here. And I'm going to turn it back to you because you want me to do the...
You're welcome to.
What's that?
You're welcome.
I'm welcome to do that. So I don't know if is there a script? Because in the past when I've given out awards, there's a script. But I don't need a stinking script for this project. We're going a little out of order. Okay, I just want the journey, the story of the preservation of the palace and the reopening of the palace is truly remarkable. I remember going in there as a kid to see some second run or third run movies. They weren't all that interesting, but we were in high school and we could drink there. So no one seemed to mind because they were just happy to have people in it. But you knew that this place was special. Fast forward many years later when Dudley Riggs did Flanagan's Wake, but only did it in the lobby if you were ever in there. And they had to do it in the lobby because if you opened up the doors to the theater, it smelled so bad of mold, no one would have been able to sit in there. So when we walked in there for the first time with this vision of creating this great music concert space, it took a lot of looking past a lot of deterioration. A whole wall that had been deteriorated as a result of water dripping in there. The seats that had been molded, the stage, the backstage that was not particularly useful for any modern theater company that would be traveling. And so we started talking with folks, and Joe Spencer and I went around. We went to Chicago to look at some of the old theaters that they had renovated for similar purposes there. And then we started looking for partners to do this. And we found a partner in First Avenue, but we found a partner in a lot of folks that had the vision and the dream for this site. And the thing that I love the most about this, other than the fact that incredible music, incredible sound, this has really been, this is a place where, actually, I'm going to have to cut myself off because I would talk about this project forever. But when you walk into this thing, I loved opening weekend because the first weekend was Atmosphere, great Central High School group of alumni. And you had to have a ticket to get on the floor because it was a hip hop show. The second night, or you had to have a wristband. The second night was the Jayhawks, for those of us that are a little bit older, and you had to have a wristband to get up and sit in the chair in the balcony. And so that it serves kind of this dual purpose, and you have different experiences between, depending upon your age and who the group is. But my absolute favorite part is at the end of the show, walking out with the crowds who just continue to look up and wonder. And they talk about the music, and they talk about what a great show it was. But mostly they talk about what an incredible venue this was and how incredible the preservation of this facility was. It makes it feel like a Roman ruin, but a lot of great music is happening there. And so to all of you that played a role in this vision, Thank you so much. And here we go. Do I read all these? I don't know. It wasn't scripted.
You only need to read the names. These are all the same.
Okay. So the first, there are a lot of mothers and fathers to this project. First of all, the City of St. Paul Department of Planning and Economic Development. I don't know who's going to be here for that. Ortel Architects. Come on up, folks. Don't be afraid. McGough Construction. Schuler Shook. Paulson and Clark Engineering. And NTH, Nelson Teets and Hoy. I don't know if anybody. There, oh. There's an NTH one there. And Joe Spencer has to come up for this as Joe lived this project.
We're now going to go back to our order and get back to recognizing some other momentous achievements in our community. There are two milestones we're celebrating, some anniversaries. There's the 40th anniversary of the Penumbra Theater and the 25th anniversary of the Dayton's Bluff Heritage Preservation District. And I'd like to ask Joe Spencer to come up here one more time for the say a few words about the Penumbra Theater.
Thank you for that, and thanks also, of course, for the recognition for the Palace. It was near and dear to my heart, and will always be. But we have this other institution, not quite 100 years old, like the Palace is, but this institution in Penumbra Theater, we probably too often take it for granted. It's been in our community for 40 years, and when we've been around something so close, even however important it is, it can often become furniture. I had the opportunity just today, in fact, to go to the Historical Society, to go to the Penumbra exhibit about the 40 years of Penumbra in our community. And it was a great reminder that the Penumbra isn't just a beloved and important local institution. It's not just an important neighbor. It's not just the organization that has helped build community in our backyard for the last 40 years. It's not just the collective of artists and organizers who've made our city stronger over the last 40 years. It's a national treasure. It's a national treasure. It is our nation's most important and highest quality African American theater, full stop. And when we think about the contributions from Lou Bellamy and August Wilson, but also the local artists who've come up from there and made national contributions to our culture, we are reminded that we cannot for a moment, we should not for a second take for granted this beloved institution. And so I applaud the HPC in presenting this recognition and invite Carla up. She's the Director of Advancement. Director of Advancement. Well, close enough.
Close enough. Anything.
But anybody who is a part of this team is somebody who deserves not just our tepid applause, but our most heartfelt thanks and gratitude on behalf of the institution. Carla, thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you so much. Thank you, Joe. Thank you also, AIA and Heritage Preservation Commission. Lou and Sarah Bellamy send their regrets. Unfortunately, they had conflicts. But I want to thank all of you for helping us commemorate 40 amazing years of great art told with an authentic African American voice and deeply rooted in Rondo and St. Paul. Thank you so much, all of you, and here's hoping for at least another 40 years. Thank you.
And now I'd like to welcome Councilmember Jane Price to talk about Dayton's Bluff Heritage Preservation District.
Thank you. It's an honor, and that's Jane Prince, and I'm the Ward 7 City Council member. You know, hearing the mayor's remarks about the importance of historic preservation, I am reminded I worked at PED in the 80s, and I remember that Latimer got all kinds of credit for saving Lower Town and for the beautiful jewel that was Rice Park. And when he was asked by national media, how is it that you had the foresight to save these wonderful historic properties? And Latimer said, we were procrastinating during urban renewal. So I've never forgotten that. But that isn't the case when it comes to the Dayton's Bluff Heritage Preservation District. This was formed in 1992 because of the incredible foresight of a bunch of my neighbors, and with the support of PED and the support of then City Council member Tom Diamond, who continues to be an incredible advocate. Kathy Lantry was a blessed angel making things happen for 18 years. You know, it's always a mistake to start naming names, but I have to mention Steve Trimble, our state representative, and our neighborhood historian, who every day continues to make us realize what the important history is that we're preserving there. And also Karen DuPaul, who isn't here tonight, but I think of her as our Mother Teresa of historic preservation. And then there's Carol Carey and her wonderful husband, Cliff. Carol I consider to be our most valuable player. So in any event, it is an incredible district of mansions, of important commercial properties, but also what makes me proudest of it is that we are preserving the working class history of our community. We also have, as Steve Trimble reminded me before I came up here tonight, we have some really important women's history. Right now, one of the houses that we saved last year, 275 Bates, was the birthplace of Joan Davis, who some of you might not have heard of, but if you watch late night reruns, she is the comedian who predated Lucille Ball with a similarly zany show, but a real groundbreaking show called I Married Joan. And she grew up in Dayton's Bluff. Catherine Piccolo. I didn't realize, I believe Catherine served on our school board, but in the Women's Army Corps, Catherine was staff to the Manhattan Project. And then most recently, Steve has written in the Dayton's Bluff Forum about our 3 really important judges. We had Judge Edward Devitt, who was a U.S. District Judge from Minnesota, an Irish member of our community. His parents were immigrants. And 2 Supreme Court justices who were in the same Cub Scout troop in Dayton's Bluff, Warren Burger and Harry Blackman. Both of their houses still exist, but significantly, Warren Burger's home was saved by our historic district volunteers, and it's now being resided in by a family, but it does have a plaque on the outside demonstrating its significance to our whole country. Over the past year, and this is maybe more than you all want to know, but I'm very proud to say that with the help of my city council colleagues, we were able to stop what the neighbors were referring to as the Dayton's Bluff Demolition Derby. We saved 6 important properties, all of which were either contributing or pivotal, and they will now be housing to 5 families as affordable rental housing, and 4 of them will be sold as affordable home ownership. And when we talk about the value of historic preservation for economic development, you just need to drive up East 7th Street and see what has been wrought during the 25 years of our historic district. It is completely converted into a vibrant main drag, and I think that some of the successes we've had have so far exceeded what anyone thought might be possible in little old Dayton's Bluff. So those of you who are here from Dayton's Bluff, I told you, well, maybe I'd just have you stand and wave, but you actually have to come up here and get the award. An architectural historian who now lives on Plum. Thanks to all of you.
And now I'd like to welcome Councilmember Tao to continue the presentations.
Thank you. First of all, they missed the memo that I need a shorter podium. So I hope y'all in the back could see me. So first of all, seriously, I want to thank you for your leadership. And when I think about the work that you do, I'm reminded of, most of you know that my father went back to join the communist resistance in 1989 when I was going to middle school. And I've not seen him since. But last night, I was going through all my stuff, and I found a cassette that has his name on it. And I was able to find a tape player. Some of you may still remember what that is. And it was a cassette that my dad sent to my mom about how much he missed the family and how he could have done things differently. And he didn't mention much about me in there. That's okay. But it brought joy into to me, and I share with my kids that this is how your grandfather sounded like when he was still around and when he was happy, or in his normal loving voice. And I tell you that story because there are things in life that we want to hold on to, but we can't. Like our age, like the people that we love that has passed on. And then there are things that we can do everything we can within our ability to hold on to for the future. And that's our beautiful landscape, our architectural design, the beautiful building that we have in this city. And you are those folks that are preserving our heritage, preserving our history, our design, so that future generation, like my children and your children and grandchildren, can enjoy. And so I want to thank you for your leadership. I know that it's hard work, and you do out of your kindness and your compassion for the city, and that means a lot. This next award here is to It came at a timely. I know there was work that was done before my time. I came on 2013, and this was a preservation project that it was about to get knocked down. The roof was leaking, and I remember people were panicking, trying to figure out how we can do what we can do to save this project. And this project is a prime example of close coordination between many entities to save historic building, and a case study and the importance of having to act quickly to remove it from all different kinds of threats. And so after the problem was identified back in 2013, MBJ, who is Meyer Borman Johnson, right? Okay. Her initial report include the recommendation that shoring be done immediately before major snowfall. The city heeded this warning and got to work, and the initial shoring was completed just 2 days before the city of St. Paul was blanketed with 2 feet of snow. Now, had it not been for this quick reaction, several city staff was ensured everything would proceed properly and on short schedule, and the building would have likely been more damaged, a total loss. So this work has compiled with the Secretary of Interior standard for restoration and rehabilitation of historic property, and the building remains a contributing essential part of a historic district. And it's also well used and not simply an empty artifact, as is home to an important agency, and that agency is the American Native Family and Children Services. I'd like to bring up these, okay? I'd like to acknowledge the American Indian Family and Children Services. If I call you, please come up here. The City of St. Paul, DSI and PD, Cornerstone Venture LLC, Fennery Construction, Marsha Mormon, Melvin Carter, Meyer Borgman Johnson, McDonald and Mack Architect, Metzen, McDonald Young, and No Nix.
Our next award will go to the Frogtown Farm. And Councilmember Tao, could you please come up and introduce this one also?
All right. I was excited to tell Jane about my dad's cassette. So, yeah. And we're gonna digitize it. So this is a project that I was really proud to work on, and I say that because, you know, I grew up in Boy Scout and liking the outdoor, and this is one of those urban jungle, I call it, and it's beautiful. It's got good fenceway. I don't know if you practice that, but it's up on a hill overlooking the neighborhood, overlooking the community. And this project has brought a lot of life and vitality back into Frogtown. So I encourage you all to come and visit. And it's a place where if you're a 2-year-old, you're gonna have fun. If you're like me, 42, you're gonna have a good time. If you're older, I think you're gonna have a good time too. And so I like to, and right now we are working on the east side, and we're building a playground there, and it's got all year round sliding. So one of the few sliding hill that we have, and this is a project that took many, lots of different organizations working together. Eartha from the Frogtown Farm, her groups. And so I'd like to recognize all of the leaders that has worked on this project for their contribution to educate, preserve cultural heritage of Frogtown Park and Farm. And the folks are Blue Stream Heritage Group, City of St. Paul, Department of Park and Rec. Please come up.
just want to take a few minutes to thank AIA and the HPC for this award. I feel kind of awkward. We didn't really preserve anything on the site as far as a building or a landscape, but what we did preserve is community space. This previously was Sisters of the Good Shepherd home, then it was home of the Wilder Foundation, and then it came under the auspices of St. Paul Parks and Recreation. And what we did was we created a report that preserved the memory of all those things that happened on the site before that, and created interpretive signage on the site to tell the story of what happened before, and then continue that story in years forward. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm Nancy O'Brien Wagner with Bluestem Heritage Group, and I just want to send a shout out to Kathleen Anglo and the City of St. Paul Parks and Recreation Department. As she mentioned, this was previously the home to the House of the Good Shepherd and Wilder Foundation, and it would be very easy to forget this history of this space. But thanks to Kathleen's efforts and those of the staff of Parks and Recreation, we were able to create this wonderful document that shows that this space has actually been nurturing families and nourishing the souls of this community for over 100 years. So we are really pleased to partner with you. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Tao, we're both going to need phone books to stand on next time. My name is Barb Bazad. I'm Vice Chair of the St. Paul Heritage Preservation Commission. And I am honored tonight to present the Community Education and Cultural Heritage Award to Mr. Frank White, author of a new book, They Played for the Love of the Game, Untold Stories of Black Baseball in Minnesota. The book was published in 2016 by Minnesota Historical Society Press, and the award is being presented to Mr. White for preserving and sharing the heritage of African American baseball through exemplary research and documentation. I've never met her, but I am indebted in this presentation to Naida Presley of the Aurora St. Anthony Neighborhood Development Corporation for her fabulous nomination, because I'm cribbing mightily from that for this very brief talk. I was delighted earlier this year to have been asked to make phone calls to award winners of Heritage Preservation Awards, and one of my favorite phone calls was to Mr. Frank White, because he had the best reaction. It was, oh wow, oh wow, oh wow. And as I did of other recipients, I asked, do you have any stories? Are there any challenges about which you want to speak in the process of putting together the book? He said, well, my first one was that from the time I was in school, I wasn't really fond of writing. So first I had to get over writer's block. And I thought he did a fabulous job here. Mr. White's book, They Played for the Love of the Game, is more than just a story of African American athletes in baseball, but also about the strength and the challenges that faced the Twin Cities African American community and others from the late 1870s to the 1970s, and of course beyond. But the book pretty much profiles a century of this and culture and community. As Naida wrote, although African Americans were banned from Major League Baseball and affiliated leagues during the era detailed in this book, superior black ball teams and individuals brought a rich sense of pride as well as entertainment to Minnesota communities. During those years, Mr. White's research really brings this into focus and preserves the legacy of the individuals and the organizations affiliated with it. And that legacy continues to the present, because the book has inspired, as he's told us and told Naida, that people have come to him with more stories, and it's made connections with current family members back to their own heritage. Mr. White recently retired from the Minnesota Twins, but before he retired, the Twins League honored and supported his project and added 4 black baseball photos to one of their venues within Target Field. Mr. White told Naida that this makes him feel that sharing this history is at its best, because young people are now looking to gather even more information about their history, and in this case, about African American baseball in our communities. So if Mr. White would come forward so that we can present him with this award and possibly say a few words. The award is up. award's also being presented to Minnesota Historical Press, so y'all come up here too.
Here I come, though. Hold that picture. I'm Naida. It was awesome. You go ahead and say it. Wow. In fact, he's my brother's best friend. Check that out. Oh, nepotism.
Well, I don't know about best friend, but anyway, I just kid. We actually played Pee Wee baseball together back in that long ago. I just want to say a very special thank you to Naida and to Josh Leventhal. This project was very special to me because it included my father and a number of people that were my friends and friends of my father's and that I was able to watch actually as a kid. This is my second time being connected to the HPC. The first time was I promoted to have old rondo signs put on the corner of Marion and St. Anthony and Ravu and St. Anthony. For some of you that don't know, right there, that section of St. Anthony is actually the original street bed of Rondo. So thank you for that too. In this story, it's been very special to me, and right now we're working with schools and going in and sharing the history because it's more than a baseball book. It's about those denials of opportunities and Jim Crow and segregation here in Minnesota that most people don't believe happened here. We only believe they happened in the South. But I think if you read the book, you'll understand that they were ever present here in Minnesota. And we don't need to dwell on that. It's just a part of our history. I hope that as I listen to the preservation of structures, one of the things in our lives is the preservation of words and thoughts and memories. And we don't do a very good job of that. Now, I'm speaking to the choir probably, but on an everyday basis, we don't really share history, Mr. Council Member, again, our parents or whatever, with our kids, our families. We don't do that. So I'm very fortunate to have interviewed probably over 100 people. I've researched newspapers from 1884 to 1960 on microfilm at the History Center. All black newspapers. They were weekly newspapers, average of, I'll say 6 to 8 pages, so you can imagine the microfilm that I've looked at. Although Steve Trimble surely knows what that is. I also want to say a thank you to Ramsey County Historic Society because this all began with a cup of coffee and a young lady named Molly Spielman that talked me into doing an exhibit with a very similar name that kind of started this whole process off. So a special thank you again to all of those people. They're not here, but I got to tell you, without their stories and information, this never would have happened. I also have to, my wife's back there, so I have to say a special thank you to my wife because I'll get punched when I leave if I don't. Just kidding, hon. So, but again, in terms of writer's block, when you run into those things and you have that block, not only did I not like to write when I was a young person, but I needed that encouragement. So my wife and a few other friends, Bill Peterson is here, were people that said, if you don't finish this, that history will be lost forever. No different than the buildings. So I'm thankful to them also. And then I'll just tell you one little tidbit as, again, these pictures. This photo is the 1923 Uptown Sanitary Shop. Uptown Sanitary Shop was a cleaner's on Cedar Avenue. The gentleman to your far left is Jimmy Lee. thank you so much for this award.
Well, it's amazing the variety of the stories that come out of these awards programs, including the ones that we've heard tonight. The security building at University in Raymond is in the city's, I think, youngest historic district, or one of them. It was created a little less than 10 years ago, the University in Raymond district. And this district in the Midway was home to a lot of companies related to the transportation industry as well as the furniture industry. And those are a couple of the things that the area was known for back in the day. I'm always reminded of this area having been actually the third largest job center in the Twin Cities for a very long time after the two downtowns. The Midway centered around the old Midway rail yards, James J. Hill's Minnesota Commercial Railway. And this building that many of us have known for years as that building on the corner with Sherritt's Liquor, otherwise known as the security building, which now houses a number of businesses as well as offices upstairs, had a beautiful restoration done that certainly is deserving of this rehabilitation award. I had an opportunity to talk to the building owner, Peter Brown, during Green Line construction days when the building and business owners along University Avenue were in for a long haul in terms of construction impacts and those kinds of things. And I could tell right away he had a real interest and sensibility in the building and the location and its history, and it was a great conversation. I was just reminded in reading the description that the original part of the building, built in 1910, would have actually been built about 25 years after the intercity streetcar line on University Avenue had been operating between the two cities. So I was thinking about that in relationship to the Green Line then being under construction about 4 years ago, and just how many, the time periods that this building, if you will, has seen in its lifetime. And so the preservation of this building and a kind of unique use of historic tax credits on a relatively small scale rehabilitation, I think, is quite creative. I'm not sure what else to say. The district itself had to be treated somewhat differently during light rail construction in terms of some of the streetscape work, and trees couldn't be blocking some of the historic views of some of the buildings. And I kind of thought that was absurd at the time. But when you look at this area, this historic district, University in Raymond, and you think about some of the other historic commercial districts across St. Paul, they're some of the greatest places that we have in the city, whether it's Selby and Western or Payne Avenue or Jane Prince mentioned East 7th Street. And so many thanks to those who had the foresight to create the district and to the group that did this work. So I want to call up the award recipients, and those are the Brown Family Properties, Peter Brown, Acme Tuck Pointing and Restoration, and Preservation Design Works, LLC. And Brennan.
We don't need a photo. We don't. I just want to say a couple words. I just want to say that I'm honored to accept the award today for Acme Tuck Pointing and Restoration. And being a younger, newer owner of a 65-year plus business has definitely been an honor, and I'm thankful to be in this group, in this community. We hold what we do as an important function in our cities here, and my whole heart is in the work that we do, and I think as I stand as the owner, really I give thanks to my employees and the people that are actually out there doing the craftsmanship. And we're working hard to continue to educate our young people, our younger employees, to have ownership and have the passion and desire to do the work that it takes to bring back buildings back to their original look and feel and aesthetics. So I look forward to being a part of this community for years to come, and so I just want to say thank you again.
Hello, I'm Amy Brennan, and I represent the 5th Ward in the St. Paul City Council, and part of the area I represent includes the Como, part of Como Zoo and Conservatory and the Como Park. And I'm really excited about this award today because it's very close and personal to me, so I'm going to share a little bit of a personal story. First of all, the Como Streetcar Pedestrian Bridge was originally built in 2005, and it is significant because it's in Como Park, but also because of its unique concrete bridge construction. I was hoping they had a before and after. It looks like they do. And so I'm sure I've seen pictures of it in its glory day, and it's quite amazing. But in the 50s, the streetcar operations ceased and the bridge fell into disrepair. And in the notes of the project description, I saw that in the 60s, vandals pushed all the railings off the bridge and really left it looking in bad condition. It was deemed a public hazard, and it was closed. Fortunately, in spite of its deterioration, the Historic Register gave it designation in 1989. So I moved into South Como neighborhood in 2007, and I live about a block away from the historic streetcar station, and I was very attracted to the neighborhood because of the newly refurbished streetcar station. But when I started to explore around, I saw this bridge, and the bridge had orange storm fencing around it to block you from going underneath it, and you literally could see chunks missing from the top of the arch, and then look down and there it was in a pile. You're like, ooh, I'm glad I wasn't standing there when that happened. It was pretty sad looking bridge, but I think the thing that was most sad was that you weren't able to go under and connect to the rest of the park. It was a barrier, and so you had to do sort of awkward ways to get around that bridge. In spite of that, I encouraged my sister to have her wedding at the streetcar station, and I remember the photographer having us, kind of pose in all these awkward positions to avoid seeing the storm fencing and the kind of raggedy bridge behind us and have the beautiful streetcar behind us. So 5.5 years ago, I became a council member, and so I was briefed on this bridge as I lived by and I knew nothing about what was going on, and I learned that there was plans to refurbish the site, but to make it an interpretive site and kind of highlight the ruins. So it wasn't going to be rebuilt, but it would at least let people know what was going on in that area and get rid of that storm fencing and make it safe for people to use the path. But there was a big turning point in the project when, in spite of how bad it looked, it was determined that the concrete structure was actually still very strong. And so with some support with legacy funding, we were able to do a full reconstruction of the bridge. I liked this description too. It said, every effort was made to preserve as much of the original material as possible to further enhance the historic context of the streetcar station and the important era it represents. Interpretive panels were placed to tell the story of the bridge, the streetcar, and Como Park. And I think that's really cool, but the part that has been most transformative to me is how this, with the bridge reconstructed, how much it has brought that area of the streetcar to life. Because before, down behind it, it felt like kind of a dead end and a stop, and you'd go and you'd have to turn around and come back. And now visitors flow through the park, and you can go up and over the bridge, and it's a really unique vista to look around. Every 6 out of 7 days, I run around Como Lake, and now my path takes me through the conservatory, the zoo and conservatory grounds, and back under the bridge. And I can tell you that nearly every time I go under that majestic arch, I see people with their dogs, people with their children rolling down the hills, people, just this Friday, the District 10 had an ice cream social, and there was 150 people, and then just over the hill, Shakespeare in the Park did a play. So it's really been activated. It's wonderful and alive. So on behalf of my neighbors, the city of St. Paul, and the 4 million people who come to visit Como on a regular basis, thank you to all the people who had the leadership and the tenacity and the vision for completing this project. It's wonderful. So we're going to all fit up here. The City of St. Paul Parks and Recreation, Clark Engineering Corporation, Hess Royce and Company, LS Black Constructors Incorporated, MnDOT, Office of Environmental Stewardship, Olson and Nesvold Engineers, Rosales and Partners, MHS State Historic Preservation Office, and Westwood Professional Services.
Just want to say a couple of things here. These folks up here represent the tip of the iceberg of the number of people that were involved with this project, and you'll be able to read more about it in Volume 2 of my history of this project, which I'm beginning tonight. One story that I'll relate on the value of this project. It was shortly getting very close to the end of the project. The bridge was looking pretty good, and there was a few little details that the construction superintendent was on the bridge one morning, and he was just kind of doing a few little details. And while he was standing there, this older woman came up to him, and she said, "Are you responsible for the restoration of this bridge?" And he said, "Well, I've done a lot of the work on it." And she says, "Well," and she went over and gave him a huge hug, and she says, "Thank you so much." She said, "I remember when I was a kid playing on this bridge and playing underneath it, and I wondered if anything was ever going to be done with it, and so thank you." So on behalf of her, thank you all for recognizing the value of this project.
I'm just going to add a quick note. As the engineer of record, it was somewhat of a challenging project to bring it back to life. But we did core samples of the concrete and found it to be tremendously strong and compressive strength. So being an arch and with Steve's guided assistance, we made it through. So I'm glad everyone likes it. So.
That was a great project over at Coleman because now they can't use the bridge to nowhere anymore. That's very beautiful. This next award is for the Cultural Heritage Award, and this award goes to the Onward Central, the first 150 years of Central High School. And this is a deserving award. There are many deserving organizations and projects, but when one of the shining spot in Ward 1 is Central High, one of the best run school in the state. And I've gotten to know the work of the committee, the Transforming Central Committee, that has also worked on this project. And I could tell you that from their just sheer determination, their smartness, teamwork, and energy. And there were times when they reached out to my office and said that they needed more money, and I have to go find money for them because they were so determined to make this project work. And so I want to thank them. And let me give a little description of the work that this project was about. Transforming Central is a volunteer-based led effort of the Central Parent Advisory Council. While Transforming Central was initially formed in 2011 to help promote the renovation of the school's ground, the committee soon realized that the 150th anniversary of the school made a good target date for the completion. Transforming Central Committee developed a goal that their efforts should reflect the historical and cultural heritage of the school. The plans for the new landscaping include both art and historical feature in the final design, and Transforming Central wanted to honor noted alumni or incorporate historical images of these features with a goal to give students and community a sense of historical significance of their institution in our city. Transforming Central focus of preserving and honoring the historical and cultural heritage of the school embodies the core values of preservation. When we record and honor our past, we can better strengthen our future. Blue Stream Heritage Group high quality research, writing, and scholarship model the quality of historic work that the heritage preservation community wants to promote. Thanks to this effort, the school, community, and broader city now has access to this fascinating and compelling history. Congratulations.
Well, I just want to say thank you very much for this honor. And the work that we did started as one project and became more projects, which often happens, I believe. But our work, really, we wanted to find out what the story of Central that we could celebrate really was. And so it's an institution that has 150 years of educating in our city, and it really, really mirrors education in our state, since it is the oldest high school in our state. We can look at it as a history not only of our city education, but also of our state's education, and really how education of high schoolers has been throughout those years. And so it's just been such an honor to work with Blue STEM, and their work that they did went far beyond what we ever imagined it would be. I think we asked them to write a 20-page document, and it became a book. and now we can share that with all who are very interested in it. Many alumni from Central are asking for copies of this. So the school keeps reprinting as they can. But thank you very much for this honor.
I'm Sarah Yeager with Blue STEM Heritage Group, and it was a tremendous honor to be involved in this project. There's something special about researching a school which has connections to hundreds of thousands of St. Paulites over 150 years, and it's such an emotional and intellectual, intimate connection. It was an extraordinary history, and congratulations to the committee.
And continuing our presentations, Barb Bazat will do the next one.
Not only can I not see over the podium, I can't see what's written here, so this is going to be interesting. The next award is for new construction in an historic district, and it will be presented. It is a two-story garage for the W.O. Washburn House at 1082 Summit Avenue. A number of people were involved in it, but there were some very interesting things. The old garage was, let's just say, it wasn't in good shape. And there were a number of reasons why this particular project is the recipient of an award. It is cited slightly differently than the old garage was. They made changes to the site and the entry, and there are details that help it reflect the heritage without being a rubber stamp of another garage in the neighborhood. So it fits all of the categories that work. The other thing that happened with this, and I wasn't on the commission at the time, but what I understand is that there were a number of design changes, as some of you may know, throughout the process of putting together the plans and elevations and siting for the garage, and the homeowners were very interested in partly in the process and in seeing what they were going to end up with that was absolutely going to work with them. And from what we understand, they're very pleased with it. So this year's new construction in an historic award goes to a number of people who I will wait till their names get up there, because I can't read 8-point type without my glasses. But yeah, go ahead, laugh. Wait till you get to this age. The award is being presented to the homeowners, Matt Lehman and Julie Switzer, to Gerald Langford from Hagstrom Builders Incorporated, Chip Lindeke of RRTL Architects, and Anthony Radke from BKBM Engineers. In the engineering, it was a bit of an engineering issue as well. So congratulations, and please come forward to pick up your certificate. And anybody else?
Thank you very much.
Well, I guess Matt and Lehman and Julie Switzer are not here, but I want to thank them. My name's Chip Lindeke with Rafferty, Tolleson, Lindeke Architects. I wanted to thank Matt and Julie for the opportunity to work on this relatively modest project, but it stretched out. And I got to say, they were very committed to trying to save the old garage. We looked at a number of options of restoring it and rebuilding it and relocating it, and none of which were very feasible. But wanted to thank the HPC for working with us and trying to find a solution that did ultimately work. Also up with me, or here with me tonight is Peter Hagstrom with Hagstrom Builders. They did a fabulous job in seeing the vision and following through with the detail of the construction and did a great job, as well as Krista Nebraska, who helped me working with the drawings on the project. And as Don Varney mentioned about the streetcar pedestrian bridge, it takes a lot of people to do these projects, although modest as they are. And it's kind of amazing. But thank you very much to HPC and St. Paul AIA for this award. Thanks very much. Should I take that to
Wow, you gonna see them?
Yeah, I can
The
do that.
homeowners?
Yeah, I can do these.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, the next presentation will be given out, award will be given out by Director of PED, Jonathan Sage Martinson.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jonathan Sage Martinson, Director of Planning and Economic Development for the City of St. Paul, and I'm pleased to give out the next award, the Adaptive Reuse Award, to the Rayette Building at 261 5th Street East. This is a building in Lower Town, downtown St. Paul, and I think the history of this building tells the story of downtown St. Paul perhaps better than any other building downtown St. Paul. It was built in 1909. It began being built in 1909. And it was originally a warehouse. They made Aquanet hairspray here. So we all have a connection, all of us have a connection to this building. Some of us stronger than others, but all of us have a connection. It was a warehouse originally. It was converted into offices, and then as the city was perhaps not at its strongest, it was converted into a parking ramp. So it was an inside parking ramp for a while, and then was converted from that parking ramp most recently into this beautiful loft building by Sherman and Associates. They followed the Department of Interior Design guidelines. They used historic tax credits. I understand they went to great detail to try and replicate the windows, given the little information there was about what the original windows looked like. They did some extensive research. It is mostly those apartments, although there is the St. Dinette here in the first floor, so it adds so much vitality. If you were by it when it was a parking ramp and you wandered by this beautiful building and you got up close and you wondered, why in the world are people parking in this building? And now it has, you go by and see people having dinner there and the residents coming and going. I have a childhood friend who happens to live here, who probably the best testament, loves living in Lower Town and loves this building, says it is a great place to live. So congratulations to the team, to George Sherman and Associates, Klaus Wilson Architects, BKBM, Kenneth Kendall, Leaf Mountain Design, BKBM Engineers, Anderson Companies, Hess Royce and Company, Slachter Design Studio. I hope some of this crowd is here tonight to come up and get an award. Please come on up.
I'll just say a few words very briefly. I'm with Cost Wilson Architects. I want to thank everyone for this award. I extend a great thanks to the entire team. I know the common thread through many of the presentations and stories told here tonight are the stories of history and the stories that tell that explain how our buildings and our cities have developed. Hess Royce did a fabulous job doing extensive research on the building, telling us exactly how it developed, what took place here, and were really instrumental in finding historic photos to explain what those windows would have looked like, because as a parking garage, there were no windows left. There were a few remnant window frames that we did do measurements to find the exact profiles and try and replicate those. A great shout out to Sherman Associates and their vision for looking past the water damage and the salt that had gotten into the structure and seeing what this building really could be. Thank you to all of our consultants that seamlessly wove in new mechanical systems, dug into the structure and preserving that had been damaged by salt over the years, and really pulling it together to a really fabulous building to preserve the history of downtown St. Paul. Thank you.
And our staff member, Christine Boular, will present the next award.
Good evening. I'm Christine Bulware. I'm staff to the Heritage Preservation Commission. And tonight we would like to honor the effort to preserve the Hope Engine Company number 3 over on Leach Street at Ramsey. If you can't hear me, I'm going to speak a little more then. You know, typically with preservation, I work on a regulatory side. I do a lot of research. I respond to applications. But where the real preservation usually takes root and blossoms is from, well, the neighbors, the grassroots. They pull it together and bring us something that we can work and run with. And in this case, the Hope Engine House is the oldest standing municipal building remaining in St. Paul. It began as a volunteer firehouse in 1874 and eventually grew into a firehouse that served this neighborhood for, well, I'm guessing almost close to a century. The neighbors have always paid very close attention to this from what I can tell from our records. Back in 1991 and 92, the Fort Road Federation recognized that this building was very significant and had asked the St. Paul Heritage Preservation Commission to nominate and designate this building. Unfortunately, at that time, there were changes in staffing and changes in funding, and a lot of things happened, and this building kind of fell off the radar, but not for the neighborhood. Through the years, I know that people have kept an eye on it, and I know even probably less than 10 years ago, we had a University of Minnesota class there with the help of John Eust, look at how this building could be reused. It was not forgotten, and thanks to close eyes from the neighborhood, they noticed when something was changing here. And by watching demolition permits at the city of St. Paul, they knew that this building was in trouble. And many, many people came together to, one, find out more on what was going on, as well as find a way to stop the imminent demolition that was about to take place last year. So without adding more to this, because I'd like to hear maybe a few folks speak up and give more of their side of the story and what this building means to them in the neighborhood, I would like to ask the following people to please come up. Historic Irvine Park Association, Historic St. Paul, Jim Sazevich, Larry Millette, Little Bohemia Neighborhood Association, Preservation Alliance of Minnesota, Bob Frame, and the Fort Road Federation. Without all of them together, this building would not be standing today. Please come up.
I'm Becky Eust. I'm the current president of the West 7th Street Federation, and I look at a lot of friendly faces out there who have worked on many issues in our neighborhood, in the West 7th neighborhood. And it's incredible for how many years we've worked in this city to save our heritage, whether it's the land and interpreting parks or the words or the buildings, and yet we still struggle. This was within days of being demolished. Days, and there was big money behind wanting it to be removed. And I'm grateful to the HPC, all of our partners in saving this. Jim Sasevich is a saint, and Tom Schroeder, who called upon his colleagues to, within 2 days, prepare a case to stop the demolition legally. And it does take a village. And it always amazes me that with all of these excellent examples of taking these diamonds in the rough and turning them into workable, livable structures again and areas, that we still have to fight this, that nobody gets it quite. And so I'm just grateful for everybody in this room and all of those that have come before us to work on behalf of saving St. Paul. Thank you.
Congratulations to all of the recipients one last time. Could we have one last applause for all of them? And the presenters. We'll end tonight with a recognition of service award for preservation commissioners who have stepped down in 2016. For the past several years, the HPC has recognized their service during this awards event, and they are presented with an artwork that highlights the local artist and also celebrates the history of St. Paul. And tonight we have Matt Hill, Diane Trout-Ortel, Amy Miller, and Matt Mazanek. And I believe only Matt Hill is here tonight, so if you could come forward, Matt. This concludes our event for tonight. Thank you all very much for coming.